My brothers and sisters in America, I need you to pause whatever you are doing and listen to me. This is not entertainment. This is not background noise. This is not a video to scroll past and forget. This is a message I have carried quietly for many years, waiting for the right moment to speak it aloud. And that moment is now. What I am about to share has the power to change how you see yourself, how you see Africa, and how you understand your place in this world. But only if you allow it. Only if you listen with an open heart and a willing spirit. I am not here to lecture you. I am not here to preach at you. I am here to speak to you as family, as people connected by blood, by history, and by a story that was interrupted, but never erased. My name is Ibrahim Traoré. I am the president of Burkina Faso, but titles are not why I am speaking to you today. I am speaking to you because I am African, and you, whether you were born in Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, or Brooklyn, are African too. That connection is why this message matters. That connection is why I have spent countless nights thinking about how to reach you. That connection is why I believe, with all my heart, that what I am about to say can change your life, if you let it. Before I go any further, I need to take you back in time, not to the story you were taught, but to the place where your story truly begins. You have been told many things about your history. You have been taught that your story began in chains, that before slavery, there was nothing worth remembering, that Africa was empty of greatness, empty of knowledge, empty of achievement. That story is incomplete, and incomplete stories have a way of limiting how people see themselves. Today, I want to begin telling you a fuller one. Before the world told you who you were, before labels were placed on you, before your identity was reduced to survival, you already had a story. But it was taken from you. For generations, you were taught that your history began in suffering, that your ancestors entered the world stage only as victims, that before bondage, there was nothing of value to remember. This version of history was not created by accident, because when people are disconnected from their past, they become easier to define, easier to limit, easier to control. But the truth is far larger than what you were shown. Long before ships crossed the Atlantic, your ancestors built civilizations that shaped the human world. They governed empires that stretched across vast lands, with systems of law, trade, and diplomacy that brought order and prosperity. They developed mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and architecture that scholars from other continents traveled thousands of miles to study. The libraries of Timbuktu held knowledge so advanced that it challenged the assumptions of the medieval world. The great kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai were not myths, and they were not marginal. They were centers of power, learning, and culture. This was not a dark continent. It was a continent of light that others did not want to acknowledge. And this is where your story truly begins. You are not the descendants of people who had nothing. You are the descendants of people who had everything and lost it through force, not failure. There is a profound difference between those two truths. When you believe your story begins in chains, you carry yourself like someone who inherited limitation. But when you understand that your ancestors were kings, queens, builders, thinkers, and leaders who were violently removed from their lands, you begin to stand differently. You speak differently. You dream differently. You stop asking whether you belong in rooms of power. You remember that your people built them. This is not about pride without substance. This is about restoring context. Because history does not just tell us where we came from. It quietly tells us what we believe we are capable of. And for too long, your history was shortened, not because it was small, but because it was powerful. Sit with that truth for a moment. You do not come from nothing. You come from continuity. You come from civilizations that rose, adapted, fell, and rose again. You carry that resilience in your blood, and once you see this clearly, the world cannot make you feel small again. Understanding history is important, but history alone does not explain why I am speaking to you now. For that, I need to tell you what I have seen with my own eyes. I was born and raised in Burkina Faso, a land rich in culture, rich in people, and rich in resources. Gold beneath the soil, knowledge in the communities, strength in the spirit of the people. Yet alongside that richness, I witnessed struggle. I watched families work endlessly and still remain poor. I watched communities depend on systems they did not design. I watched decisions about our future made far from our villages, far from our voices. As a young man, these contradictions stayed with me. I asked questions that had no easy answers. Why did a land so full of potential struggle to meet basic needs? Why did progress always seem just out of reach? Why did development feel like something promised but never fully delivered? These questions followed me into my military service. They followed me as I served my country, and as I buried friends who lost their lives in conflicts that seemed endless. I saw courage, I saw sacrifice, but I also saw patterns repeating themselves. Over time, I began to understand something important. Many of the challenges we faced were not the result of a lack of intelligence, effort, or discipline. They were the result of systems that were not built with our long-term strength in mind. I am not here to assign blame. I am not here to name enemies. I am here to speak honestly about structure. Because when a system is not designed for your success, working harder inside it is often not enough. This realization changed me. There came a moment when I understood that asking questions was no longer sufficient. At some point, responsibility demands action. I did not step into leadership believing I had all the answers. I stepped into it believing that continuing on the same path would lead to the same results. Change does not begin with certainty. It begins with courage and a willingness to accept responsibility for the future. And it was in that moment, standing at the intersection of history and possibility, that I realized something else. The story of Africa's struggle and the story of Black America's struggle were not separate stories. They were chapters of the same book. For a long time, the world treated Africa and Black America as separate stories. Different places, different struggles, different destinies. But when I looked closely, I saw something else. I saw the same patterns repeated on different soil. I saw communities rich in talent, yet limited in opportunity. I saw narratives that focused on deficits instead of potential. I saw people blamed for conditions they did not create. And slowly, a deeper truth became clear. The forces that shaped Africa's challenges did not stop at the coastline. They crossed the ocean. The same ideas that once justified taking land, labor, and resources also shaped how Black communities were treated elsewhere. Different locations, different experiences, but a shared logic. This does not mean our stories are identical. They are not. Each has its own pain, its own resilience, its own victories, but they are connected. When millions were taken from African shores, it was not only a physical removal, it was the separation of families, the breaking of language, the interruption of memory. Those who were taken lost their immediate connection to home, and those who remained lost generations that would have shaped the future. Both sides carried the loss. Both sides carried the silence. Over time, that separation created distance, not just geographical, but emotional and psychological. Africa was taught to see the diaspora as distant. The diaspora was taught to see Africa as foreign. That distance served no ordinary people. It served confusion. It served disconnection. And disconnection is powerful because people who do not see each other as family rarely move forward together. Yet despite centuries of separation, something remarkable remained. The connection never disappeared. It survived in music and rhythm. It survived in faith and expression. It survived in resilience passed quietly from generation to generation. It survived in questions that never fully went away. Where do we come from? Why does this feel unfinished? Why do we feel tied to a place we have never seen? Those questions are not weakness. They are memory. And memory, even when suppressed, has a way of returning. This is why this moment matters. Because for the first time in generations, the distance between Africa and its diaspora is no longer enforced by silence. Information flows, people connect, stories meet again. What was once separated is beginning to speak to itself. And when parts of the same story begin to reconnect, something new becomes possible. There is a pain that does not always speak loudly. It does not announce itself. It lives quietly beneath the surface, passed down in ways that are rarely named. It is the pain of separation. When people were taken from Africa, the loss did not end at the shore. It continued across generations. Those who were taken lost more than freedom. They lost language. They lost names. They lost the ability to point to a place and say, "This is where we come from." And Africa lost something too. We lost millions of our strongest, our most capable, our most resilient. We lost future leaders, builders, teachers, and visionaries. We lost generations that would have shaped our path forward. This was not a wound that healed with time. It was a wound that was never treated. Instead, both sides learned to survive around it. In America, many learned how to succeed without fully belonging, to adapt, to excel, to build lives, while still carrying unanswered questions inside. In Africa, many learned how to endure loss without closure, to rebuild, to continue, to move forward, while sensing that something essential was missing. Across oceans and centuries, the wound remained open. That is why so many Black Americans describe a feeling they struggle to explain. A feeling of not being fully rooted, of being present, yet somehow incomplete. And that is why many Africans speak of the diaspora not as strangers, but with a quiet familiarity they cannot always put into words. This shared grief does not mean weakness. It means humanity. Grief appears when something meaningful has been lost. And loss, when acknowledged, can become the beginning of healing. Healing does not erase history. It does not deny pain. It creates space for truth, understanding, and reconnection. We are living in a time when that space is finally opening, not because the past has changed, but because we are ready to face it together. Something quiet is happening in the world right now. It does not always make headlines. It is not driven by spectacle or slogans, but it is real. Across Africa, more and more people from the diaspora are arriving, not as visitors passing through, but as individuals seeking connection, purpose, and belonging. They come with questions. They come with skills. They come with curiosity. Some arrive expecting answers. Others arrive simply hoping to feel something they cannot explain, and many of them do. I have met men and women who stepped onto African soil for the first time and felt an emotion they were not prepared for. Not excitement alone, not nostalgia, but recognition, a quiet sense of, I know this place, even when they had never seen it before. This feeling is not imagination. It is not romanticism. It is memory carried forward. The body remembers what history tried to forget. For many, this return does not mean abandoning their lives elsewhere. It means expanding them. They begin to see Africa not as a distant continent defined by challenges, but as a living place filled with people who are building, adapting, and creating every day. They discover communities full of energy and ideas, young entrepreneurs solving local problems with global relevance, artists telling stories with depth and dignity, innovators working with limited resources and unlimited determination. They also discover something about themselves. Many realize that the sense of dislocation they carried for years was not personal failure. It was the echo of separation. And when that separation begins to soften, something inside them settles. This is not a movement of escape. It is a movement of reconnection. It is not about rejecting one home for another. It is about remembering that identity can be wider than a single place. And this is only the beginning. If you are still listening, I want to speak to you clearly and practically. Reconnection does not begin with grand gestures. It begins with small, intentional steps. I am not asking you to change your life overnight. I am not asking you to abandon your responsibilities. I am asking you to begin seeing Africa and yourself more fully. Here are 4 simple ways to start. First, change how you think about Africa. The images most often shown to you are incomplete. Yes, Africa faces challenges. Every part of the world does. But Africa is also innovation, creativity, resilience, and opportunity. It is a continent with the youngest population on Earth, with ideas being tested and solutions being built in real time. When you broaden your understanding, you free yourself from narratives that were never meant to serve you. Second, learn about your specific heritage. Today, information that was once inaccessible is within reach. DNA tools, historical research, and oral histories can offer clues about where your ancestors came from and who they were. You may discover regions, cultures, and traditions that help answer questions you have carried quietly for years. This knowledge does not limit you. It grounds you. Third, consider visiting Africa when you are able, not as an obligation, not as a test, but as an experience. Even one visit can change how you see the world and yourself. It can replace assumptions with understanding and distance with familiarity. If it is not possible now, let it become a future goal, something to plan for, something to work toward. Fourth, think about partnership. Africa does not need to be saved. It needs to be worked with. Skills, ideas, investment, and collaboration can create value that lasts. Value that stays within communities and supports long-term growth. This is not about charity. It is about mutual respect and shared progress. None of these steps require perfection. They only require openness. And openness is where reconnection begins. Reconnection is not an idea without evidence. It is already taking shape in real, tangible ways. Across the continent, there are people from the diaspora who have chosen to engage thoughtfully, respectfully, and patiently, and the results speak for themselves. There are medical professionals who have partnered with local clinics, bringing experience while also training future caregivers from within the community. They do not replace local systems. They strengthen them. There are educators who have helped build schools and training programs, combining global knowledge with local context. They teach skills, but they also help young people see themselves as capable contributors to the world. There are entrepreneurs who have identified everyday challenges and turned them into opportunities for innovation. They create jobs. They support families. They reinvest in the communities that sustain their work. And there are artists, writers, and cultural voices who are helping tell fuller stories about Africa and its people. Stories that reflect dignity, complexity, and truth. What all of these efforts share is intention. They are not based on rescue. They are based on relationship. Those who approach Africa with humility and patience often discover partnerships that grow stronger over time. They also discover something unexpected. Many say that the work they do feels meaningful in a way they had not experienced before, not because it is easier, not because it is without challenges, but because it feels connected to something larger than themselves. This is what happens when effort aligns with purpose. Africa is not waiting for permission to grow. It is already moving forward. The invitation is not to lead from above, but to walk alongside, to contribute skills, learn in return, and build something that lasts. This kind of reconnection creates value on both sides of the ocean, and it reminds us that progress does not have to be one-directional to be powerful. Now, I want to speak directly to those of you who are younger, those who are still shaping your path, those who have not yet been weighed down by routine, comfort, or fear of change. You are living in a moment that previous generations did not have. You have access to information that was once hidden. You can learn about Africa without relying on secondhand narratives. You can connect with people across the ocean instantly. You can see, hear, and engage in ways your grandparents could only imagine. The distance that once felt permanent is no longer fixed. This gives you options, and options come with responsibility. Many people wait for the right time to explore who they are and where they come from. They say, later when things are more stable, later when I am more established, later when life slows down. But later often becomes never. The earlier you begin building connection, the more it shapes how you grow. Spending time learning about Africa, or even spending time there, is not a distraction from your future. It can be an investment in it. It expands your perspective. It strengthens your adaptability. It places you at the intersection of cultures, ideas, and opportunities. Imagine understanding two worlds deeply instead of one. Imagine building relationships that cross borders naturally. Imagine carrying confidence that comes from knowing your roots. These experiences cannot be downloaded. They cannot be summarized in a book or a lecture. They must be lived. Those who take this step early often find that it changes how they approach everything else. Their careers, their values, their sense of purpose. You do not need to have everything figured out to begin. You only need curiosity and courage. History is shaped by those who move before certainty arrives, and your generation has the chance to complete a chapter that was left unfinished, not through force, not through anger, but through understanding and connection. Before I end this message, I want to speak to your heart one last time. Many of you carry a quiet pain you rarely name, the feeling of not fully belonging anywhere, the feeling of being strong, capable, accomplished, yet somehow incomplete. This pain is not weakness, it is memory. It is the echo of a separation that lasted longer than any lifetime. I have met people from the diaspora who wept not because they were broken, but because something inside them finally felt seen. They grieved not only what was lost, but what they were never given the chance to know. I want you to know this. Africa sees you. Africa remembers you. Africa recognizes you. Not as outsiders, not as strangers, but as family who have been away for a long time. This does not mean you must leave your life behind. It does not mean you must choose one home over another. It means allowing yourself to be whole, to carry your American experience and your African heritage together, not in conflict, but in balance. When you know where you come from, you walk differently. You speak with clarity. You face the future without shrinking. The door to Africa is open, not as a demand, but as an invitation to remember, an invitation to reconnect, an invitation to heal a story that has been incomplete for too long. Come home, not only in body, but in understanding, in identity, in truth. And from that place of wholeness, live with a strength rooted deep in the past and reaching confidently toward the future. This is my message to you, my brothers and sisters in America. May it stay with you longer than this video. May it guide you quietly, and may it remind you of who you are. Amen.